In yesterday's podcast, I focused on Kamani Vidal, the third time I had talked about him in the first 90 something podcast episodes. First time he was used as an example. The second time he was one of 9 examples. And this third time yesterday, he was featured. Why? Because I'm really interested in pressure point fantasy players, these guys whose values could go up or down based on one performance. And not just up or down, but dramatically up and dramatically down. What jumped out at me last night is that we look at the big picture. If someone just didn't watch the game and saw the stats at the end, they say, wow, Vidal was amazing. And the reality was, he was amazing for the second half when the game started to get out of hand. And the Chargers had been wearing down the Vikings defense. The Vikings offense could not sustain many drives. I don't know how much time they were on the field, but I would imagine the defense was on the field for maybe 35, 36 minutes. I'm recording this late Thursday night, so those numbers are not available yet, or at least available to me. I don't know. I haven't. Admittedly, I have not looked it up, but it's an approximation. I think it's going to be 35, 36 minutes. But at a certain point, Vidal broke through. But in the first half, man, I mean, first 5 rushes, he had -3 yards. And Jarrett Patterson was starting to get involved. And then by halftime, Vidal had 11 carries, I think, for 19 yards. He did have a score. Terrific. But it looked like the score would be the thing that saved his night. It didn't look like he was going to turn things around in the second half and blow up. And the fact that Patterson was involved, there was a chance, a realistic chance, that if Vidal had started slowly in the third quarter, that Patterson could have gotten more run at that point. And today we might be talking about how Vidal and Patterson were both effective in their own ways. Vidal getting the goal line look, and Patterson bringing more efficiency. But that's not the narrative, because Vidal was able to turn things around in the second half, in part, I believe, because the Chargers had worn down the Vikings defense, and in part, justifiably, Vidal is a good enough running back to break things open. You got to give him credit. The podcast yesterday, what fascinated me was that Vidal was dominated the Dolphins 2 weeks ago. The Dolphins have one of the worst run defenses. And then Vidal was pretty much locked down by an elite Colts defense. The Vikings were just better than middling in terms of their run defense going into this game. So it seemed to me a really good test to see whether Vidal would still have potentially standalone fantasy value even when Omarion Hampton returns from his injury. And that is key for a lot of fantasy managers. If you have Hampton, probably won't affect you very much. I mean, whether he's getting 22 touches or 17, isn't going to be a big deal. And if the Chargers are winning games like they did last night, Hampton will probably be part of the celebration of that in terms of getting points, racking up points in the first 3 quarters. And then Vidal could be playing some mop-up work, up 18 points or something like that in the fourth quarter. And Vidal gets his, 6, 7 points or whatever. That is doable if Vidal shows that he belongs off the sidelines and on the field more than just once or twice a game. And 6 to 7 starts to get into the realm of, deep league streamer. And what Vidal did yesterday, the second half, gave him that bump. Things would have been different if he had not. I'm pretty confident of that. Who knows? But I'm pretty confident, because that would have been 2 really rough games for Vidal in a row. And the clock would be ticking at that point. If Haskins comes back, Hassan Haskins, and you have Jarrett Patterson, Vidal's a former 6th round pick. He's not owed anything in this offense. It's just that he's the hot hand. And we've seen time and again, hot hands become cold hands. And they turn the ball over to somebody else, to see if they can get it done. The Chargers are clicking, by all accounts. I mean, their offense, their record, they started 3-0 and then, hit a rough patch, but they look like a team that other teams will not want to play in the postseason, because you can get a guy like Quentin Johnston getting nothing and still be run over by that offense. because of the ascending or ascendant or already ascended Oronde Gadsden, because Ladd McConkey, while not as great as last year because it's a more packed receiving core, is still very good, bordering on great. He's doing better in the last few games than I gave him credit for. I thought he would be, top 20 to 25 receiver, and he's playing like, a top 12 receiver over the past few weeks. It's come at the expense, at least last night, of Keenan Allen, who realistically could not sustain top 10 numbers at his age and given the crowdedness of that receiving core. But the fact that you've got an offense that is that strong, even if it's only focused on three playmakers and Justin Herbert, which is primarily what happened last night, and the fact that there were so many other effective playmakers not heavily involved, that really says a lot about what this offense can do. So back to Vidal, finally, a final word on him is that if you have him, this is a good time to really take stock of this, at what point is Hampton expected to come back? And do you, before the trade deadline, the fantasy trade deadline, try to shop him to the Hampton manager and try to get, see if you can get a top 25 value, top 20 value for him because he is a fantastic hedge. Hampton's injury suggests that when he returns, it's quite possible that Hampton will be eased back in. Maybe if Vidal's cooking, Hampton maybe is getting 12 to 14 touches and Vidal's getting 8 to 10 or 12. There might not be a sense of urgency to reinsert Hampton into this bell cow role. And so you can shop Vidal as someone who still has standalone value. If you don't get that kind of hook from, those bites from the manager that has Hampton, you don't need to push it, obviously. But the point is, from what happened last night, you can take comfort in the fact that Vidal is controlling his fantasy destiny. And he's doing a very good job of controlling it despite the slow start last night. It's almost better that he had the slow start and then figured things out than if he had just been good throughout the game, because I think it shows a certain level of ability. If you can adjust mid-game, the whole team had to adjust, obviously. But the fact that the Chargers stuck with him, despite that slow start of 11 carries for 19 yards, says a lot about what they think of him the rest of the season. I'm BJ Riddell, Fantasy Football for Winners. Follow me on the blog. Email me anytime. We'll see you tomorrow.